The small diner was silent except for the clatter of dishes as Detective Williams finished explaining how Marcus Thompson had been using his restaurant as a drug operation headquarters. The evidence seemed airtight, the testimony convincing, and Marcus's fate sealed. But then a tiny voice broke through the courtroom tension like thunder. 8-year-old Amelia Thompson stood up in the gallery, her small finger pointing directly at the detective. What she was about to reveal would not only save her father from 20 years in prison, but expose how his own restaurant had been used against him in a conspiracy that would destroy entire careers. Imagine you're completely innocent, but facing corruption with no one to believe you. What would you do when the system itself is against you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of everyday quiet heroes. Marcus Thompson had never imagined that owning a small neighborhood diner could destroy his life and tear apart everything he had spent 15 years building through honest work and unwavering dedication to his family and community. Thompson's Diner sat on the corner of Oak Street and 3rd Avenue, a modest establishment with red vinyl booths that had been reupholstered twice over the years, a black and white checkered floor that Marcus mopped religiously every night after closing, and the persistent smell of bacon grease that had soaked into the walls over 15 years of operation, creating the comforting atmosphere that regular customers had come to associate with home. It wasn't much to look at from the outside, with its faded paint and simple neon sign that flickered occasionally during storms, but it was honest work that fed working families and kept Marcus's own family afloat during difficult economic times that had challenged many small businesses in their neighborhood. The restaurant represented more than just a source of income. It was the embodiment of the American dream that had brought Marcus to this country with nothing but hope and determination to build a better life for his family. The diner had been Marcus's dream since he was a young man working double shifts at a factory in the industrial district across town, saving every penny while living in conditions that most people would consider unacceptable for long-term residents. He had saved every penny for 7 years, working nights and weekends without complaint, living in a tiny apartment above a laundromat where the constant noise of washing machines made sleep difficult and the humid air from dryers created uncomfortable living conditions throughout the summer months. His diet during those years consisted mainly of ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, cheap meals that allowed him to save money for the down payment on the small restaurant space that would become his family's future and the foundation of their life in America. Every sacrifice had been worthwhile when he finally signed the lease and began transforming the empty space into his vision of the perfect neighborhood diner. When he finally opened Thompson's Diner after months of renovation work that he had done mostly himself to save money on contractors, it represented everything he believed in: hard work, honest service, and providing for his family through legitimate means that made him proud to look at himself in the mirror each morning. The grand opening had been modest, with hand-painted signs created by Elena and homemade pies that she had baked in their tiny apartment oven. But the neighborhood had embraced their small business with warmth and loyalty that sustained them through the challenging early years. Marcus was a quiet man in his early 40s, with calloused hands from years of manual labor and a gentle smile that made customers feel welcome from the moment they walked through his front door. He possessed the kind of authentic warmth that couldn't be faked or trained, greeting each customer as if they were a guest in his own home. He worked 16-hour days without complaint, arriving before sunrise to prep vegetables and mix pancake batter for breakfast rush, staying late to clean every surface until it gleamed under the fluorescent lights that he had installed himself to save money on electrical work. His wife Elena worked alongside him with equal dedication and love for their shared dream, managing the books with meticulous care and serving customers with the same warmth and hospitality that had attracted Marcus to her when they first met at a community college business class 15 years earlier. She had believed in his dream when others called it unrealistic, supporting him through the lean years when they wondered if they would be able to pay rent, and celebrating every small success as they built their business together, one satisfied customer at a time. Elena had given up her own career aspirations to help build the restaurant, using her education in business administration to handle the financial aspects of their operation while also serving as hostess, waitress, and sometimes cook when Marcus needed assistance during busy periods. Her ability to remember customers' preferences and her genuine interest in their lives had created a loyal clientele that viewed the diner as more than just a place to eat. Their daughter Amelia was the light of their lives, a precocious 8-year-old with her mother's rich chocolate-colored skin, her father's kind eyes that seemed to see the good in everyone she met, and a crown of soft curls that bounced when she laughed at her own jokes or played with the regular customers who had become like extended family. After school, Amelia would sit in the corner booth doing homework while her parents worked, occasionally helping by refilling napkin dispensers or greeting regular customers who had watched her grow up from a toddler who could barely see over the counter to a bright young girl who knew everyone's usual order by heart. The little girl had become the unofficial mascot of Thompson's Diner, charming customers with her innocent observations and precocious comments about the adult world she observed from her corner booth. Regular customers would ask about her school progress, help her with difficult homework problems, and celebrate her achievements as if she were their own grandchild, creating a sense of community that extended far beyond typical business relationships. The diner attracted a steady clientele of construction workers who needed hearty breakfast before dawn shifts, nurses finishing late shifts at the hospital 6 blocks away, elderly residents who appreciated the affordable prices and patient service that larger restaurants couldn't provide, and working families who knew they could get a decent meal without breaking their budget during tough months. Marcus prided himself on knowing most customers by name and remembering how they liked their coffee or eggs, creating the kind of personal atmosphere that chain restaurants could never replicate despite their marketing efforts and corporate training programs. The restaurant had become a community gathering place where people shared news, celebrated birthdays, and supported each other through difficult times that affected everyone in their working-class neighborhood. Marcus had hosted fundraisers for families facing medical emergencies, provided free meals to unemployed neighbors who were struggling to feed their families, and created a warm environment where people from different backgrounds felt welcome and valued regardless of their economic circumstances. During holiday seasons, the diner became a center of community celebration, with Elena preparing special meals for customers who had nowhere else to go and Marcus staying open late to ensure that no one in the neighborhood had to spend important occasions alone. The restaurant's role in the community went far beyond commercial transactions, serving as a social hub where relationships were built and maintained across generational and cultural lines. The diner represented the best of small business ownership, proving that success could be measured in community impact rather than just profit margins. Marcus had never pursued aggressive expansion or franchise opportunities, preferring to focus on maintaining quality and personal service that larger operations couldn't match. His business philosophy emphasized building relationships rather than maximizing revenue, creating a sustainable model that benefited both his family and his community. What Marcus didn't know was that his humble establishment had attracted attention from people whose intentions were far from honorable and whose presence would ultimately threaten everything he had worked to build over 15 years of dedicated service to his community. Detective Rick Williams had discovered Thompson's Diner 6 months earlier, not as a customer seeking a meal, but as a corrupt police officer looking for the perfect location to conduct a legal business without attracting suspicion from fellow officers or department investigators who were becoming increasingly vigilant about police misconduct. Williams was a 20-year veteran of the police force with a reputation for getting results, but his methods had become increasingly questionable as he built relationships with criminals who paid him to look the other way during drug investigations. He had developed a network of informants, dealers, and corrupt officials who helped him maintain his position while profiting from the drug trade. He was supposed to be fighting as part of his sworn duty to protect and serve the community that trusted him with their safety and security. The detective had risen through the ranks by cultivating an image of dedicated law enforcement, volunteering for difficult assignments, and building relationships with prosecutors who relied on his testimony to secure convictions in high-profile cases. But beneath this professional exterior, Williams had been gradually corrupted by the easy money and power that came from cooperating with criminal organizations rather than fighting them, trading his integrity for financial gain that supported a lifestyle beyond his official salary. His corruption had begun small, with accepting bribes to provide information about upcoming raids or investigations that might threaten drug operations. Over time, his involvement had deepened until he was essentially working as a criminal while wearing a police badge, using his position to protect illegal activities and eliminate competition through false arrests and fabricated evidence that sent innocent people to prison while protecting guilty ones who paid for his services. The detective's criminal activities had expanded to include protection services for drug dealers, evidence tampering in cases involving his criminal associates, and the recruitment of other officers into his corrupt network. He had built a sophisticated criminal enterprise that operated within the police department, using official resources and authority to facilitate illegal activities while maintaining the appearance of legitimate law enforcement work. Williams had also developed relationships with corrupt prosecutors and judges who were willing to overlook irregularities in his cases in exchange for favorable treatment in their own criminal activities. This network of corruption extended throughout the local criminal justice system, creating a web of complicity that protected all participants while victimizing innocent people who lacked the resources to challenge fraudulent prosecutions. The detective had quickly realized that Thompson's diner was ideal for his purposes after conducting a careful survey of potential meeting locations throughout the city. It was small enough that conversations could be conducted privately without other customers overhearing sensitive information, busy enough during certain hours that strangers wouldn't stand out among the regular clientele, and modest enough that no one would suspect it of harboring anything more sinister than overcooked burgers and weak coffee that some customers complained about but continued to drink out of loyalty to Marcus. Most importantly, the diner had no security cameras, making it impossible to document whatever activities took place inside. Marcus had never seen the need for surveillance equipment in his small restaurant, trusting his customers and believing that his modest establishment held nothing worth stealing. This innocent oversight made his diner perfect for Williams's criminal activities, providing a completely unmonitored environment where illegal business could be conducted without fear of electronic evidence that could be used against participants in future prosecutions. The restaurant's layout also suited Williams's needs perfectly for conducting criminal business without detection. The back booth provided a clear view of both entrances while being far enough from the counter that conversations couldn't be overheard by staff members who might accidentally witness criminal activities. The storage room offered additional privacy for more sensitive discussions that required complete secrecy, and the back door provided a discreet entrance that allowed Williams and his associates to enter without being seen by other customers who might remember their faces. Williams began using the diner as a meeting place for his illegal activities, arriving during slow periods when Marcus was in the kitchen preparing food and Elena was handling the few customers at the front counter. He would sit in the back booth with a clear view of both entrances, order coffee, and maybe a piece of pie to maintain his cover as a legitimate customer, and conduct business with drug dealers, corrupt informants, and other police officers who were part of his growing criminal enterprise. The meetings typically involved planning drug operations, dividing proceeds from illegal activities, and coordinating efforts to protect criminal organizations from law enforcement interference. Williams would use his police radio and official resources to provide real-time information about patrol locations and investigation activities, giving criminals significant advantages in avoiding arrest and prosecution while their competitors faced the full force of legitimate law enforcement efforts. During these criminal meetings, Williams would discuss upcoming raids with drug dealers, allowing them to relocate their operations or destroy evidence before police arrived. He would also provide information about undercover officers and confidential informants, putting lives at risk while protecting criminals who paid for his services. The corruption went far beyond simple bribery, involving active participation in criminal conspiracies that threatened public safety. Marcus occasionally noticed the detective's presence, but assumed he was simply a police officer who appreciated good food and reasonable prices during his breaks from patrol duties. Williams was careful to appear professional and friendly, even leaving generous tips that made him seem like a model customer worthy of appreciation and respect. When Marcus tried to engage him in friendly conversation about community issues or local events, Williams would politely deflect, claiming he was reviewing case files or waiting for a work meeting that required his full attention. The criminal activities conducted in Thompson's diner expanded over several months as Williams became more confident in the security of his chosen meeting location and the reliability of Marcus's unwitting cooperation. Drug dealers would arrive at scheduled times to discuss territory disputes, share intelligence about law enforcement activities, and plan operations that Williams's information made possible. The restaurant's innocent atmosphere provided perfect cover for these criminal conspiracies that were destroying communities throughout the city. Williams also used the diner to meet with informants who provided information about rival criminal organizations in exchange for protection from prosecution for their own crimes. These meetings involved planning false testimony, coordinating fabricated evidence, and ensuring that Williams's criminal associates remained protected while their competitors faced arrest and imprisonment based on lies and manufactured evidence. The conspiracy against Marcus began when Williams realized that his illegal activities were attracting attention from internal affairs investigators who were becoming suspicious of his sudden wealth and questionable arrest patterns that didn't match the standard procedures followed by honest detectives. Federal agencies had also begun investigating police corruption in the department, creating pressure that threatened to expose Williams's criminal network and send him to prison for decades. He needed a scapegoat, someone who could take the blame for drug activities while protecting himself and his criminal network from prosecution and imprisonment. The ideal candidate would be vulnerable to accusations, unlikely to mount an effective defense, and connected to a location where criminal activities had actually occurred, making the charges appear legitimate to prosecutors and juries who trusted police testimony. Marcus Thompson was perfect for Williams's purposes for several calculated reasons that the corrupt detective had identified during his months of using the diner for illegal meetings. As an immigrant who had worked hard to build his business, Marcus was vulnerable to accusations and unlikely to have the resources to mount an effective legal defense against charges supported by police testimony. His modest diner provided a plausible cover story for drug distribution, and his limited connections in the legal system meant that he would struggle to prove his innocence once accusations were made by law enforcement officers. Williams spent 2 months carefully constructing a case against Marcus, using his position as a detective to fabricate evidence and manipulate witness testimony in ways that would appear legitimate to prosecutors and judges who trusted police investigations. He recruited informants who owed him favors to claim they had purchased drugs from Marcus inside the diner, providing them with detailed descriptions of the restaurant's layout and specific information about Marcus's appearance and behavior that would make their testimony appear credible. The fabricated evidence included false surveillance reports documenting suspicious activity that had never occurred, describing meetings between Marcus and known drug dealers that existed only in Williams's imagination and criminal intentions. He created detailed logs of alleged drug transactions, complete with dates, times, and descriptions of criminal activities that painted Marcus as a sophisticated drug dealer operating under the cover of his legitimate business. Williams also arranged for physical evidence to be planted in the restaurant during his visits, carefully placing drugs in locations where they would be discovered during a planned raid. He used his knowledge of police search procedures to ensure that the evidence would be found in ways that appeared natural and convincing to other officers who were not part of his conspiracy. The arrest happened on a busy Thursday morning when the diner was packed with customers enjoying breakfast before work, creating maximum embarrassment for Marcus and his family, while providing witnesses to the dramatic raid that would be covered extensively by local news media. Williams arrived with 3 other officers who were not part of his criminal conspiracy, presenting a search warrant that had been obtained using fabricated evidence and false testimony. The raid was carefully orchestrated to appear legitimate while ensuring that planted evidence would be discovered in ways that supported Williams's fabricated case. The detective had visited the restaurant earlier that morning during the breakfast rush, using the distraction to plant cocaine in the storage room where it would be found during the search. Williams loudly announced that they were investigating drug distribution activities, speaking loudly enough that all customers could hear the serious nature of the charges. The dramatic presentation was designed to embarrass Marcus and create the impression that he was a dangerous criminal who had been deceiving his community for years while operating illegal activities under their noses. Customers watched in shock as police officers searched the diner systematically, following Williams's directions to areas where he knew evidence had been planted. The discovery of cocaine in the storage room created the dramatic moment that Williams needed to justify the arrest and convince observers that Marcus was guilty of the charges being brought against him. Marcus protested his innocence with increasing desperation, but his limited English and obvious distress made him appear guilty to the observing customers who had trusted him to provide honest service in their neighborhood. His emotional reaction to the accusations seemed to confirm his guilt rather than demonstrating his shock at being falsely accused of crimes he had never committed. Elena broke down in tears while 8-year-old Amelia watched in confusion as her father was handcuffed and led away in front of the customers who had become like extended family over the years. The little girl couldn't understand why police officers were treating her father like a criminal when she knew he was the kindest, most honest man in the world who worked harder than anyone she knew to provide for their family. The arrest created chaos in the restaurant as customers tried to process what they had witnessed, many of them struggling to reconcile the serious criminal charges with their personal knowledge of Marcus's character. Some customers left immediately, while others stayed to offer support to Elena and Amelia, uncertain how to respond to the shocking developments. The local news coverage portrayed Marcus as a drug dealer who had been using his family restaurant as a front for criminal activities, betraying the trust of customers who had supported his business for years. Williams provided statements describing the long investigation that had led to the arrest, emphasizing the need to protect the community from criminals who hid behind legitimate businesses to distribute poison to local families and children. Marcus was charged with drug possession with intent to distribute, operating a criminal enterprise, and conspiracy to traffic narcotics throughout the city using his restaurant as a distribution hub. The charges carried a potential sentence of 25 years in prison, effectively ending his life as a free man and destroying everything he had worked to build for his family's future. His court-appointed attorney, David Chun, was a dedicated public defender with genuine concern for his clients, but he was overworked and underfunded, struggling to mount an effective defense against evidence that appeared overwhelming to anyone who reviewed the case files. Chen had dozens of other cases requiring his attention, leaving him little time to investigate the specific details of Marcus's situation or challenge the testimony of experienced police officers. Elena was forced to close the diner while Marcus sat in jail awaiting trial, unable to afford the bail that had been set at an impossibly high amount designed to keep dangerous criminals off the streets. The family's modest savings were quickly depleted by legal fees and living expenses, while the community that had once supported their business now viewed them with suspicion and fear based on the serious criminal charges. The trial began 6 weeks after Marcus's arrest, in a courtroom filled with reporters, community members, and curious observers who wanted to see the drug dealer who had operated under their noses for years. Judge Harold Peterson, a stern man in his 70s with decades of experience presiding over criminal cases, called the court to order as prosecutor Linda Martinez prepared to present the state's case against Marcus Thompson. Detective Williams took the witness stand wearing his dress uniform, medals gleaming under the courtroom lights as he prepared to deliver testimony that would send an innocent man to prison for decades. His presentation was polished and professional, describing months of careful investigation that had uncovered Marcus's alleged criminal activities with methodical detail that impressed the jury and court observers. What no one in the courtroom knew was that 8-year-old Amelia Thompson possessed evidence that would expose the entire conspiracy and prove her father's innocence beyond any doubt. 3 days earlier, Amelia had been playing quietly in the diner's storage room, while Elena tried to organize paperwork and prepare for the family's uncertain future after the devastating impact of the criminal charges. The storage room was small and cramped, filled with boxes of supplies and old furniture that Marcus had accumulated over the years of running his restaurant. Amelia had created a small play area behind stacked boxes where she could hide with her dolls and pretend games, enjoying the privacy and quiet that the hidden space provided during the stressful period when their family's world had been turned upside down. It was during one of these play sessions that she overheard a conversation that would change everything for her family and expose the corruption that had destroyed their lives. Detective Williams had entered the diner through the back door, using a key he had somehow obtained during his previous visits, and was talking on his cell phone in what he believed was complete privacy. Amelia remained hidden behind the boxes, initially frightened by the unexpected presence of the man who had arrested her father and destroyed their family's happiness. Williams's voice was low but clear in the quiet storage room, and Amelia quickly realized he was saying things about her father that she didn't understand but knew were important and somehow connected to the terrible situation that had befallen their family. She quietly retrieved her small pink phone, a gift from her grandmother that was primarily used for games and taking pictures, and began recording the conversation without fully understanding why it seemed necessary, but knowing somehow that it was important. The recording would capture Williams describing his criminal conspiracy in detail, providing the evidence needed to expose his corruption and free her father. Williams was talking to someone about the upcoming trial, expressing confidence that Marcus would be convicted based on the evidence he had fabricated through careful planning and manipulation. He mentioned specific details about how he had planted the drugs, coached the informants to provide convincing testimony, and manipulated surveillance photos to create a convincing case against an innocent man who had never committed any crimes. The recording captured Williams describing how Thompson's diner had been perfect for his illegal meetings because Marcus was too trusting and too focused on his legitimate business to notice what was happening in his own restaurant. Williams laughed as he explained how easy it had been to use Marcus's honesty against him, turning the man's kindness into evidence of criminal conspiracy. For 3 days, Amelia carried the burden of this secret knowledge while watching her father's trial proceed toward what seemed like inevitable conviction. She knew she had something important, but she was only 8 years old, and the adult world of courts and lawyers seemed impossibly complicated and frightening for a child who had never been inside a courtroom before. The moment of truth came when Detective Williams completed his testimony and Judge Peterson asked if there were any final questions or evidence to be presented. The courtroom was quiet, filled with the expectation that Marcus Thompson's fate was sealed and that he would soon be sentenced to decades in prison for crimes he had never committed. The detective is lying. Amelia's voice rang out clearly across the silent courtroom, causing every head to turn toward the small girl standing in the gallery. Her chocolate-brown eyes were fixed on Detective Williams, who had gone pale as he realized that his carefully constructed deception was about to unravel in ways he had never imagined possible. Judge Peterson looked down at the brave little girl with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Young lady, this is a very serious proceeding. Are you sure you understand what you're saying?" "Yes, sir," Amelia replied, her voice stronger now despite her nervousness. "Detective Williams used my daddy's restaurant for bad meetings, and now he's lying to put my daddy in jail for things he didn't do." When the recording was played in the quiet courtroom, its impact was devastating and immediate. Williams's voice was clearly audible, describing how he had fabricated evidence, manipulated witnesses, and chosen Marcus as a scapegoat to protect his own criminal enterprise. Detective Williams was arrested in the courtroom, while Marcus was released immediately, all charges dropped. Marcus reopened Thompson's diner 3 months later, supported by a community that now understood he had been the victim of police corruption. Amelia became a local hero, celebrated for her courage in speaking truth to power. If you've watched this far, you know that some of the most powerful moments in history have come from the smallest voices speaking the biggest truths. Amelia's story reminds us that courage has no age limit, and that sometimes an 8-year-old girl with a pink phone can bring down an entire conspiracy that adults failed to see. Her determination to save her father proves that when good people speak up, even the most corrupt systems can be exposed and reformed. If stories like Amelia's inspire you to believe that truth always wins, no matter how young or small the voice that speaks it, please subscribe to our channel. Because every quiet hero's story deserves to be heard, every act of courage deserves to be remembered, and every reminder that justice can come from the most unexpected places is worth sharing. Thank you for believing that heroes come in all sizes, and that sometimes the most important evidence comes from the most innocent hearts.